Before beginning the Tahoe Public Utility District, we will please stand and join me in a pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming. At this point, do we have any comments from the audience on non-agenda items? I don't think we do, so let's move on to the next one. Do we have any corrections to the agenda or consent calendar?
I'll move the consent calendar.
Real quick, Wayne, what I think I'm going to do, we have a presentation, item number 11B. What I think I'd like to do is move that up right before the action item so that our presenters aren't stuck here while we go through a long meeting, if that's all right with everybody. Okay. So, Dwayne has a motion. Is that okay, Ellen?
Motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a first and second. Here comes the vote.
Okay, thank you all. 0. So at this time, we would like Julie to introduce our seed solar project. Maybe she wasn't ready for this. Oh, is that you, Shannon?
No, she's on phone.
Okay. Shoot, maybe I messed up on movies. You want to just
I think I can.
kick it off? Is that okay? I think that it's Julie.
Yeah, and I can speak to it. Go ahead.
Brian, are we on lectern or live show?
We are in lectern.
On what?
Lectern.
Okay, got it.
You're gonna have some stuff on your screen.
I was getting some feedback a minute ago. It was just like air traffic control or something, so 1,500 volts.
It's here. You change this line. Just your key. I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, I just went a little way before, but I'm watching the screen. Sit there and jump around.
Take a while.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Like I've got this. Yeah, okay.
Julie's on, but she has no audio.
Okay. I suppose it's too obvious to say *6 or whatever it is.
Yeah. She's good now.
Six to unmute.
But now she has no audio.
Okay, I'm good now, I think. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Loud clear, thanks, Julie.
Mostly loud.
Well, I think we have Denver there, and we've been working together for the last couple of weeks, working through some details on alternatives for y'all to consider for possibilities for the solar photovoltaic for the wastewater treatment plant. And he's been doing some outreach to Liberty. I'm sure he will tell you about that. And, you know, we've got some positive feedback and some not so positive feedback on that front. So I don't want to spill his beans, and so I'll let him go ahead and take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Just having some clicking.
How do I adjust to zero keys? Just forward and back.
Okay.
Good deal. Sorry about that.
Awesome, no problem. I want to thank everyone for the opportunity
to kind of recap, obviously, our team was the selected preferred vendor of the C Fund RFP to place photovoltaic for South Lake Public Utility District solar array that we're looking to utilize, repurpose some land as a part of that. In that discovery and kind of that discussion, it led us down the road of basically 3 options that we were going to look at. And today, as a part of our agenda, we're going to overview those options, talk about some next steps, and then kind of get to questions and answers, because there is a lot of data as far as what we were able to dive into. As a part of the 3 options that we looked at, the first was a 1.4 megawatt system. Let me see if I can clear that so that later everyone can see. The second was a 4.2 megawatt system, and the third was going to be maxing out the capability of the land itself. Post that meeting, our first engagement was with Liberty Utilities to determine the viability of each one of these options. What we found was that option 1 and option 2 were viable. We're going to talk through those options. The reason they're viable is because we were able to interconnect behind a service that had the same type of usage profile as the production of these facilities. The problem with our third option is that we were oversized from the wastewater treatment facility's load, and Liberty Utilities does not have the appetite to offtake that overproduction of power and send it somewhere else. So since we weren't able to get behind any type of service to take that large of load, then we had to dequalify that option. But it did leave us option 1 and option 2 available. The secondary challenge that we looked at as a part of that, or the secondary exercise that we went through, was looking at multiple finance options as far as rate and term. So as a part of option 1 and option 2, we're going to see series of 1A, which is going to be a 20-year term with a 2% escalator. Option B, which is going to be a 25-year term with a 2% escalator. And option C, which is going to be our original submission, which is our 20-year term with a 0% escalator with the additional carports that we had for the premium parking for the employees. Same way on our option 2. We're going to have option A, option B, and option C. The main thing that we're looking to do is to be able to supply the board with enough information to help make a decision on which direction you would like us to push, not only from the financial end, but also from the regulatory end with Liberty Utilities. With that being said, we're going to start with option 1. My clicker work? Try it. Uh-oh.
I'm going to try the one at the bottom. Don't mind me again.
For some reason it's working now. So the first step of this, and thank you to Ms. Julie and team, we're able to get together and basically take the last 36 months of utility data and start to build a profile. So a lot of the graphics that we're going to see today is going to be the production of the array and how that measures against our profile. So basically the graphic that you're seeing there is if we took the energy load from the wastewater treatment facility and span that out over 36 months. With option 1, we're basically looking at a ground-mounted photovoltaic array. We have the ability and have talks of moving this further to the east or further north. We really have the ability to position this array with whatever will be best for the district itself. I understand that we might have some further development that can go on out there, and we can actually customize the design to fit that development. An additional request was to look through the losses and the way that we determine our production. So we wanted to make sure that we accounted for all of those in the picture to the right as a part of our production tree. When we look at that, obviously you can see kind of on a monthly level, and that graph itself you're going to see here again on the next couple slides, but it just really shows the production of the solar array itself, and then it shows all of the accounts for the system losses that we put into effect. Basically all of the test runs that we did on our side to make sure that the photovoltaic system would be able to produce the numbers that we're talking about here as a part of these economics. When we look at the option 1, the 1.4 megawatt system that would be interconnected directly behind the meter, what we did on the left is we basically did a usage versus production profile and then accounted for an offset. So as you can see, months January all the way through December, you can be able to tell exactly what percentage of the load would be offset by solar. The production curve to the right in the blue basically shows the exact same energy profile that we illustrated before. The green is the solar effect on that energy profile itself. Understanding that's the basis of the information that started, we move into the economics. These economics start with the 895 starting PPA rate for the 1.4 megawatt for the 20-year term. And as you can see, one of our goals was to try to be able to look and/or create cash flow positive scenarios as quick as possible for the district to be able to show a return and/or revenue. That's what you're seeing kind of listed out all the way through. Just kind of starting left to right so that way we can kind of understand the theme. The first column, obviously to the left, is going to be the year. The next column is the production year over year. We're using a 2022 utility cost. This was derived off the information that was put together by Ms. Julian team, basically using the standard escalation rate of what we're seeing from Liberty, what we have seen from Liberty in the past. The reason why we have a 2022 start date on that is because based off of the construction schedule and the different things that are going on with the timelines that we would fit in, that's when our power flow would begin, would be at the end of that 2022. So when looking at all of those things as far as basis of the economics, that's kind of where we started. So if we look at the avoided cost of utility, that's exactly what you're paying now or what you will be paying in 2022 for the exact same power. The PPA rate is in the column right next to that. The column next to that is the total PPA payments. And then obviously the delta, or as we can see right here in year one, in this scenario, lack thereof, is the cash flow. And the column to the right of that is the cumulative cash flow. So I understand that it's a lot of numbers, but we wanted to be able to kind of lay out that basis of transparency to be able to provide the granularity of data to help you all make the best decision for the district.
Could you minimize that box in the right-hand corner on the screen? The go to meeting box? Yeah, that one. We tried.
Maybe they don't want over there.
Can you move it out of there to the side or?
Could you please increase our cash saving?
There we go.
So I'm going to do that on the next slide. All right, gotta get to the next slide. Get that. Maybe does that work better for everyone? I know
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
You never heard that.
Get to my next one.
On that chart, can you talk about the, and maybe you already telling us, the years after 20, what your calculations are reflecting there?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So what you're seeing right here is, so during the first 20 years of the transaction, all of the operations and maintenance, all of the warranty work, basically every piece of liability is going to fall on the financier that is financing this project and therefore holding and owning the PPA system. At year 20, it would be turned over back to the district for zero cost, and at that point, it would be the district's responsibility to hire someone for that operations and maintenance. And so what we've done based off of market rates and what we feel like we see as far as to operate and maintain the system and what we feel like those costs would be, I have estimated those out for the district so that way you could account for those as a part, because it would be a cost to y'all post the end of that term. Obviously, you would have the option to renew as a part of that, and we could continue basically with the operations and maintenance of that array if so fit. The next is option B. As we can see with it, the major changes that you're going to see is we're extending the term from 20 to 25 years, and you can see the effect of the cash flow. So the same basis from left to right, it's just the starting PPA rate now is at an 812, and that yields a positive cash flow year one of that $18,594 and yields over almost $4 million to the district over the life of the system. Then as you can see, that added cost, or the only cost to the district kind of post that year 25 would be the operations and maintenance. What we look at finally in option 1 for B, or for C, and get my key to change. Apparently every time it pops up that my microphone's muted, it won't let me change the slide.
Now I'm going to try to put a little blue thing in the box.
Don't remind me again.
Do you see the don't remind me again section?
Oh no. All right. There we go. And so option 1C, this is originally what we had in our submission design. This also includes the carports. This was one of the reasons why we looked at alternative options, is because We wanted to try to create a positive cash flow scenario sooner in the life of the transaction for the district itself. So in this scenario, this is an 11.8 PPA that does not escalate for that 20-year term. But obviously, as you can see, your avoided cost of power is at that 8.9 cents, and the delta between the two is what you're seeing create that negative cash flow.
What's the estimated life of the system?
The guaranteed life of the production of the system is 30 years. At year 30, you will still have 85% of the production life left in the modules. There might be a small inverter technology upgrade that has to occur at that time to keep efficiencies, but the panel life themselves is well over 50 years. When we move to option 2, which is our 4.2 megawatt system that would be interconnected behind the meter, obviously we show the exact same matrix there of how we came to our production numbers and all of the losses that have been accounted for in association with that. We also show the effect on the energy profile. Now, one of the things that we did with Liberty as a part of the discussions is that their main regulatory rule is that they have a net metering cap of 1 megawatt AC, which is basically what option 1 fits into. What we would be doing as a part of this 4.2 megawatt is we would forego their net metering tariff and would move to a direct offset net excess generation type of interconnection. What that basically means is that you would be directly connected and you would use the power first from the solar array before you would use the power from the meters. What I have illustrated here on the left is the exact same chart, except here you can see that we're going to be overproducing in 6 out of our 12 months. And then I show the effect of how that has on the district and then what that shows in the savings numbers. So just kind of understanding this as we move through, we can see that we're going to be overproducing 120% or 114,000 watts in the month of April. That's going to create a bill credit for us of $10,208. With that, we create a net positive cash flow because of the delta of the PPA itself to the district of $1,147 in that month. So what that means is, as a part of your bill, you will have your total usage, you will have your net excess, or what was generated back to the grid at that part, then you will have the credit of the $10,208. That, combined with the PPA payments, yields that net positive cash flow of that $1,147. And yields a total positive cash flow of that $14,241. Now that's just in credits from Liberty Utilities. That does not account for our direct offset. Looking at the overproduction, you can see the effect of our profile and therefore the overproduction percentages that we're seeing in the sheets to the left. When we look at our option 2A, this is our 20-year term with a 2% escalator. As you can see, as a part of this, we're going to be producing over 7 million watts of electricity, which basically offsets the profile 110%, which is our legal law as far as high as we could size the system or as large as we could size the production of the system itself. Exact same matrix running from left to right. You can see in this scenario, we can create $78,689 worth of positive cash flow year 1 for the district under this scenario.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Is that why you reduced from 4.6 down to 4.2 system?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Based off the data that Ms. Julie provided us, that's basically the matrix that we ran because we have that 110% cap.
Right.
Yes, sir. When we look at option 2B, which is the most lucrative out of all of the options that we have to present for the district, we can see same exact matrix here. Our starting PPA rate is down to that 7.4 cents, and the delta between the 7.4 and the 8.9 yields $107,000 worth of positive cash flow year 1 for the district, and well over that 12 million over the life of the term. When we look at option C, this is what we basically submitted as a part of our submission bid with the C fund. This is the zero escalator for 20-year term, and you can see that we're able to yield a positive $21,461 in cash flow year 1 for the district. Again, the out-of-pocket costs would start at the end of that term for operations and maintenance, which would really be the only cost to the district at that time.
I want to make sure I understand.
Yes, sir.
The difference between 2B and 2C is what now? Because I think it was still 4,200 kilowatts.
Yes, sir. So it's the exact same system size. It's the exact same production. The only difference is the term and the escalation. So what we're seeing in 2B is that it's a 25-year term with a 2% escalator. In 2C, we're seeing a 20-year term with a 0% escalator.
Okay.
And in reality, when we look at the difference between the two options, the decision is whether it is smarter, whether it is better for the district to generate cash flow early in the transaction, positive cash flow, or whether we have time to wait for that cash flow. Because as we look at the life of the system itself, we can see that on 2B, the life of the system generates almost $13 million worth of positive cash flow. But only generates 107,000 year one and then 12.7 million over the life. In 2C, we only generate 21,000 worth of year one positive cash flow, but almost 17 million over the life of the system. Again, the difference in the term of the power purchase agreement and the escalation rate of the power purchase agreement. Those are the levers or the ways that you kind of squeeze the balloon, for lack of a better term, to kind of make the best fit.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And then for us, from our side, and this is kind of the exact same next steps that we looked at previously, we would want to get direction on a preferred option. We would want to begin our engineering and feasibility studies from our side, develop that safe harbor strategy that we talked about as far as being able to build the confidence with the financial group that we're moving forward with the project, so that way they can invest the funds to be able to maintain the investment tax credits, which push these types of transactions forward. And then obviously we would like to continue with what we started with the groups as far as the PPA negotiations and then moving forward to executions when that time comes. I know I powered through that. I know that it's a lot of numbers that we were going through, but it was a lot of deliverables as far as the different options that y'all would like to see. And I really wanted to provide that level of granularity to give you the data that you needed to make the best decision for the district.
I do have a question. We were talking about if we went extra large, that Liberty would not appreciate us generating more power than we could use because they got nowhere to put it. Because of the time constraint, the answer to my next question is probably already there, but what if the college were to participate? Even though when we would be generating the most power, it's probably when they would not have as many students.
Correct.
They have quite a bit of power generation that they're on this property, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought, well, that might be a way to do that.
So we brought up the option of additional off-takers in the area that would possibly be able to supply that overproduction with. The feedback that we received from them was that the only way that would be possible is if we could interconnect behind their service. So what would basically have to happen is that we would have to, wherever we built at, we would have to have an economical run to be able to connect behind their main service. And therefore would work under that scenario. But that's kind of the only way that they would allow us to do. Outside of that, we have that 110% of annual production cap that we're pretty much limited to by the state. It's not necessarily Liberty that does that to us.
I don't know where their service connects, whether it's at the main building or by the gymnasium or where.
And that's something as a part of, with our team, since we're, already going to be doing all of the environmentals and interconnection and studies, we could run feasibility things to determine where that service is, exactly where that run would be, how that would look, all of those types of scenarios, and could be able to report back with feasibility. But it could run parallel. That system would be completely independent of either option one or option two as a part of this process.
I mean, I think the numbers are terrific. What you put forward, the negotiations with Liberty, the fact that the energy is going to be given to us first before out to the community. I mean, we've talked at length about kind of the safety benefits of that, and the money speaks for itself. And so I think to me, and I'm curious with the other board members, and kind of going back and forth with is it better to have more capital now, or to kind of the 2B versus 2C discussion, right? That you call as well. sitting here right now, I would say I'm leaning more towards the 2C, where you get less up front and more kind of with a long term, but I wouldn't say I'm married to that idea, so I just was kind of curious about
Remember,
that.
that's 30 years in the future.
Right,
And money has a time value.
right, and that's kind of my debate.
So, you know, several million more 30 years from now has very low present value.
That's correct.
So it's something to consider.
Yeah.
One comment I make, I want to make sure we have a clear understanding, because it was one of the questions I had for you, was about this interconnection to the district, that we would not be, for example, during the power outage in the Liberty's facilities, we would not be powered by the solar system, even if it was in the summer, and it's potentially generating a lot of power because of the safety factor that it's going to be connected to the grid.
Yeah, we would have to have our own grid.
Yeah, and we don't, and this is not part of that program. We would need batteries and things of that nature. Those are discussions. Just so that's clear, this does not help us on our redundancy issues. We still have the generators that we just completed for that effort.
I would say, kind of adding on to that, I'd say not yet.
Yeah. Right.
Yet is a key word. I would say for our redundancy issues, I would say this helps it entirely, because this is the biggest piece of the puzzle. Say now, if we move forward, battery and storage system into the future, that will allow us to go 100% renewable. In essence, at the plan. So I would say from a redundancy standpoint, although we can't get there yet, this is, like we talked about, kind of you're just building upon pieces to eventually get there. So this is just a big piece in that effort.
Agreed.
Yeah, we have generators at the plant, we put them in like 20 years ago. I can't believe already they're too old, but time goes by. But I also would think redundancy, we've ended up needing redundancy at a lot of our pump stations, things like that. So that would, I hope, be maybe part of it, part of a contract if we were to do it, that said that in the event that we decided to, we can open up the contract. And,
I think we're very open to that discovery as a part of this.
I think that kind of goes to, where we cite these as well, is that, kind of master planning this exercise out into, conceivably into the future, if you were able to get battery storage meets the 15, how would that look on the ground, meets the district's expansions as well, kind of just a rough outline, but, start to think into that future.
Exactly.
We had talked last time about, those numbers were very impressive, they were very good, but there was a lot of numbers to crunch. I would like some sort of independent eyes to look at those, whether it be somebody on our staff, which I don't know if our staff has the expertise, but we had talked about a consultant. And it's not that, not that I don't trust you guys, I just like to have another set of eyes to make sure those numbers are real or close to real.
We,
100% agree.
we have a consultant on board now.
Well, can that be done in the time frame we need to do? Because I understand the trigger needs to be pulled for certain tax advantages prior to the end of the year. And I don't know how long a consultant might take to review this.
I can, Julie, I can email her, we forwarded her a copy of the presentation, so she's got that information. Check out her time.
And it should be from a deliverable perspective, since from at least my understanding, the production side of the numbers have already been verified and are in line with what they see as acceptable. So at that point, it's just a math problem. You're just basically taking the delta, basic usage times whatever that usage is costing you, then the same production times whatever the production cost you, and you minus those two numbers, and that yields your delta and our savings and our loss at that point. So it should be very easy to
seems like the unknown factor is what Liberty's actually going to charge, whether Liberty's bought out by somebody else, goes out of business, we run out of business.
Well, now once we're interconnected, now that's a binding lifetime contract for power flow for the life of the system.
Regardless of who the owner
I'm
is.
talking about what their rates will be or not. The one unknown that we're building in as a supposition is what their rates are going to be.
Correct, yes, sir. We are assuming that they would escalate at the same rate they've escalated for the past 10 years, with us starting at 2022, yes, sir. So that is an assumption.
Thanks for calling me sir this first time.
So what's, I guess,
Can I
Yeah, please, go ahead, Julie.
Denver, you want to talk a little bit about the carports, how they're incorporated, and kind of the impact that they might have if we were to exclude them?
Yeah, definitely. So we've included, as a part of the option C, we've included the covered parking, cantilever parking for the employees right here and then right here, right across the front in that front parking. If we're able to remove that as a part of the offering, then we've seen from the larger system that we can actually decrease that rate by almost half a cent. And with the smaller system, or I'm sorry, with the larger system, we can decrease that by almost 0.2 of a cent. And with the smaller system, the option 1, it would decrease that rate by half a cent as a part of that, because we're removing that cost of install. As far as when we're looking at our cost to build, now we're not, putting that into account.
And if I remember right, if we did the parking coverage, which would be nice, and less for snow and things, they would have the solar on top of it.
Yes, sir.
But the install would be too expensive.
Well, so the install is reflected in that option C. I think that, obviously we see a lot more red numbers in those option Cs, and that carport has something to do with that, just because of the weighted average install of cantilever, covered parking, and then a ground mounted system.
So what would that equate to, and just the percentage for, because I just want to, because I agree, I think there's other co-benefits with having it as well. But I'm just curious, what does covered parking cost at that point?
So it's for the 1.4 megawatt system, it's half a penny on the PPA rate.
Right, so, but in a year, is there any way?
So it would just be simple as far as the production of the array times that half a penny.
Okay.
I think the back of the envelope math, it was coming out to about $10,000 a year, based on our production of the array.
Perfect.
So it's
And then all you're basically,
$10,000. I don't know.
sorry, Jim. All you're basically doing is just amortizing the cost over the term.
Right.
That's all this basically is.
So what next?
So next, obviously, I know that there's not an item on the agenda to push towards a direction, but if we could, once the numbers were able to be digested, once the independent review was taking place and therefore certified, then our team would just want a heads up of the 2A, 2B, 2C, 1A.
We would probably want an action item for the board right here.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
And so do you know how long an independent verifier is going to take?
I need to check with her.
But like you said, kind of looking at solar projects as well, it's pretty straightforward.
I was going to say the production verification is normally the hardest part of the process, because that's a program that you actually have to run numbers through and understand tilt and azimuth and sun hours and all of those things. Once you've verified all of those metrics, it's literally utility cost versus PPA rate and production of array versus usage. And that into a math problem yields either savings or yields a loss. And then you just carry that out year over year with the financial terms and then the escalator from the utility, and then that yields your cash flow.
One other question on 1A and 1B and 2A and 2B, that was built in with the 2% escalator.
Correct.
CPA did.
Correct.
The C options were flat, right?
Correct.
But there's in here, they're actually decreasing.
That's because you're going to have a degradation of your panels. So your panels are going to degrade by 0.5% year over year. And so that's the reason why it's not an actual de-escalation. It's just the panels are going to produce 0.5% less in year 2 than they did year 1, and so on and so forth. Yes, sir.
So Randy, out of curiosity, so kind of based on your earlier comments, I'm assuming you would be advocating more for kind of the initial savings.
Yeah, I was looking probably more of a B, option.
Right.
Instead of a C option.
Okay.
But I have to see what Hughes says. Let him have a chance to crank some numbers. He's our numbers man.
No, I'd be happy to. This was the first time I've seen numbers, so I can't really say much about it right now. But I'd like to.
Yeah.
Because I'm honestly, whatever's best.
Yeah.
I know that sounds like a great answer, but.
Yeah, I would prefer to have somebody look at this with a better eye to money and money issues. Someone like Paul or equivalent, would let us know. But I know, I thought you said that on one of the presentations, there was a slide up, you said this is the most economical for the district. And I believe that was a B option, I thought.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2B is our lowest PPA rate that
Right.
can be derived out of all of these metrics.
I guess one thing that would be helpful for the board and staff, I guess, is how much appetite is there for the covered parking spots? Is that really important or not?
That's a good point. I guess one of the things we could look at is how much do we spend with snow removal right now in the parking lot? Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna go away, but it might decrease a little bit.
Honestly, and Chris has a lot more expertise in this, I think it would be relatively incidental because you've still got to have all that equipment.
You gotta have
all that staff, you're still paying them. And instead of there being a swing through, maybe one or two swings through the actual parking spaces, you're swinging through the aisle regardless, right? So I'm not sure that it would be much of a cost savings to the district.
But I would agree with that. We would have a snow load.
I haven't thought about it much, but my gut reaction is the parking would be an extra expense outside of the scope of this.
It is normally, we found in the majority of scenarios that it is a premium type of product. But there are obviously ancillary benefits with that premium product. I mean, you get covered parking, but yes, it is a premium cost product.
Just do one for the employee.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as if we were like in a place like Vegas where it was 110 every day or whatever, then I would say, yeah, that's a high priority. But
and that's where we see the majority of our applications.
Our biggest downside is the staff. So
That's correct.
It would keep the pine cones off in the cars.
yeah, especially when those green ones with scroll sheets off.
Oh.
A couple thoughts on the carports as well, if I might. So adding the carports does complicate the configuration of the array because now instead of just having them all collected in one location with one feed into the plant, you've got this other small feed on the opposite side of the plant to wire in. And another thought was that, one of the reasons why we wanted to at least take the idea through this point is that, it's in our parking lot, and so it's good advertising for the effort. But I think Denver could tell us a little bit about some of the other things that they might be able to do for us to help really display and demonstrate that we've made this effort. Maybe there's some sort of display panels or something that we could mount in the front garden there, or in the lobby to kind of advertise the project.
Yeah, for a lot cheaper than a parking.
Exactly. So as normal kind of consideration with these projects, especially when we have a public traffic flow, we normally do what we call an education kiosk or an education center that's surrounded around the sustainability efforts of the project itself. So we would have a TV and or a dashboard that would be reporting the live data from the solar array as a part of it. One of the other big proponents with ProStar and Core, mainly with ProStar being owned by the Dallas Cowboys, is that these types of projects, the sustainability efforts are near and dear to their hearts as far as from their side. And the PR abilities, we're a lot better at advertising and marketing than we've been at playing football this year, just to say the least. But it's like a fossil that when they get behind these types of projects. So I mean, we could keep everything on a local level, or we can nationalize the type of press that would get behind a project like this, and the amount of visibility that we could give the district as a part of a project like this.
Okay, so we'll just keep going along the direction we're going, and I don't know if does it make sense to carry both sizes of projects through, or do you want to narrow it down at this point?
So I would need to, the part of us being able to instill confidence in the finance partner is being able to determine that financial direction itself.
I mean, I don't know what you guys think. If this truly does pencil out, it appears that the larger project makes more sense.
That's something done without the carports, right?
Right, without carports.
Yeah.
Well, if we're gonna have an analysis, we should have an analysis between 2B and 2C.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
I didn't know if that helps the Paragon at this point, or if we
I
carry.
think so.
Yeah, okay.
Is it Ed Bobbin? That's important.
I mean, just sitting here and having this stuff float through my mind, but I think a lot of the ordinances can be determined on how fast you want to continue moving forward with your CIP. Because obviously, the more money you guys have up front, the more it can help offset some of that and possible rate increases.
That's a good point. Okay, so do you guys feel comfortable with having him get rid of the lower output project? Okay. Yes.
Here, what I can do from my side is I can scrub down to the B and C minus carports as a part of that and provide that analysis so you can provide it to the independent group.
So, I like what you're saying about having Paul involved. It makes sense to look at the CIP in conjunction with the outside advice to see which one would have an effect in the long term on dollars.
Yeah, we didn't raise rates this year. Yeah.
Just based on what we know now, what it would be. So just be in the loop, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it would be pretty easy. Maybe we can just plug in the numbers from the different scenarios into our own long-range forecast to see how that affects things.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good deal. Well, thank y'all so much for the time and opportunity. Appreciate it.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to move on to item 6A. And this is the report that all of you hopefully have gotten and read through. The ad hoc committee spent a lot of time looking at a possible reorganization, and we're presenting that reorganization right now. I personally hope you had a chance to read the report. I was trying to think of what to say to summarize this, but it's a complicated thing, and I think the report kind of stands by itself. John's going to go through some of the items, and then maybe Chris and I can chime in afterwards, unless you got something to say now.
No,
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll just take us through the report a little bit, and just starting with page 1. We talk about district challenges, an aging system, economic pressures, regulatory pressures, competition to attract and retain a well-qualified, high-performance workforce. So, and then we talked a little bit about, 2 years ago, I was hired by the board, and in part, and it's quoted here, to bring finance, engineering, operations, and all other departments together like never before to balance system needs with staff capacity, customer rates, and a general scarcity of funds. And then earlier this year, my 2020 goals was approved by the board. It included a number of items, including organizational efficiency, organizational cost effectiveness, evaluate organizational structure, and overall advance ongoing efforts toward peak performance and a continuous improvement process. So then we talk about the ad hoc committee, when the ad hoc committee was formed. I guess moving on to page 2, we talk in a little more detail about our service challenges. We detail current system challenges that the board is well aware of, and I've listed some highlights of those: leaking and undersized water lines, unmaintained and failing valves, hydrants throughout our system, excessive infiltration and inflow, and known and projected sewer system defects and failures, extensive upgrades coming and numerous pump stations, failures at numerous pump stations, either the pumps or the buildings, electrical, etc., sewer pump and well failures. And then we've seen a lot of this recently: water quality problems, high turbidity, sanding, and just it's indicative of a lack of system maintenance. So next we talk about our financial challenges. looking back to 2019, we completed a 5-year Prop 218, looking at a maximum of 6% water, 5% sewer. In that very first year, we went with the 4% water and the 5% sewer, so we're already cutting that down a little bit. And then, of course, COVID hit us, and we went with 0% rate increases this year. And with just this 1-year pause in rate increases, that revenue impact to our 10-year CIP is some $21 million. And also, as part of our pandemic response, as you recall, we reduced current year O&M expenses by $1.1 million and capital by $1.8 million. And attachment A has the details on those budget modifications. So nearly $3 million in total just this year due to COVID, and most of these costs were delayed. They won't go away, and we need to refund those as soon as possible. So then moving on to page 3, we talk about organizational efficiency and effectiveness, and the concept, there's more work to be done. Our systems are aging and in need of repair and replacements. Do we need more workers, and or is there a better, more efficient, more effective way to organize as well? Is there a better way to allocate funding for O&M, CIP, and needs-based staffing, especially for our frontline workers, these union positions that are on the ground in the field doing the work on our systems? So next we looked at a number of other organizational structures under organizational research, and we're showing kind of the results of that on attachment C. We looked at initially 25 different comparator agencies, and we took out some of the cities because it didn't really seem to match our analysis for organizational structure. But we ended up with 21 agencies, and I can go through that attachment C in more detail if we'd like. But those agencies, 19 of those came from our salary survey, and then we added a couple other ones, IFGID and Tahoe Sanitation District, as part of this kind of regional comparative analysis. So I think, and probably Randy and Chris will talk a little bit more about this, about their thoughts over time. I'd like to share a long history by board members about the need for an AGM. But due to this and some of the research done, the AGM position was identified early on as a likely candidate for effective organizational change. And then this report kind of gets into the details of that analysis. A potential reorganization that does not include the AGM position is shown on attachment D. And moving on to page 4, we kind of dig into organizational inefficiencies. We reviewed district job descriptions for senior management at the district, and we found that the AGM position is duplicative, as nearly every significant duty detailed in the job description overlaps almost entirely with job descriptions of other existing positions. We identified 6 elements within the AGM job description that are not already included in other job descriptions and would likely need to be adapted. And then we provided some suggestions for each one of those 6 elements. Moving on to page 5, we kind of come back and take a more detailed look at the comparator agency structures, again, detailed on attachment C. And in our review of comparator agency structures, we found that the AGM position or equivalent occurs about half the time when looking across all 21 comparators. And this reduces substantially when we look at the 7 regional agencies, 2 do and 5 don't. And this trend continues. If we looked at, of all the 21, we looked at the top 10 that are kind of most like us. 3 do, 7 don't. So I think really the bottom line of this comparator agency structure analysis is that agencies are very different and have very different structures. The AGM position is common but not typical, and most GMs do have direct operations and engineering reports. Moving on to page 6, we looked at organizational effectiveness, and the committee saw this structural change would put the GM and the most direct contact and connection with these critical departments, operations and engineering. And this represents almost 3/4 of our entire workforce and nearly all of our discretionary spending. So the committee saw this connection as being very important moving forward. So next, further down on page 6, we talk about the reallocation of financial resources, our scarcity of resources. The AGM position is expensive. It costs $3.13 million over 10 years in 2020 dollars. And the committee was really looking at perhaps this funding can go to other O&M, CIP, or even other staffing needs in the future. So moving on to page 7, we look at the schedule. Now we got here, why now? And I think again, maybe Randy and Chris can speak to their thoughts over time on the AGM position. But one reason for now is that the budget season is upon us. We are developing our staffing budgets for the next fiscal year. And actually, I am looking for more frontline workers. So I'm looking for financial space for more frontline workers, for more. We have 3 limited term positions that are really doing long-term jobs. And I'm looking for financial space to bring additional frontline workers onto our workforce. And that's a different conversation and discussion. But also, why now? We have a lot of experience on this board, with the 4 board members especially. We do have some change coming, but there's a lot of experience on the board to make this kind of assessment. And then finally, the preliminary report concludes, as we now enter the budgeting process for the coming fiscal year, the ad hoc committee recommends that we eliminate the AGM position through reorganization as soon as feasible and consider the reallocation of funds to areas of other budgetary needs. So that's really overview of the report, and this report was provided to the managers on Tuesday, and I do have some comments that were provided to me this morning by some of the managers. And I just want, these are some comments from some of the managers, and there's other managers that I've heard from directly that they do not want to be part of a consolidated set of comments coming from the management group. So these comments that you had when you came in, it's comments regarding item 6A are coming from a handful. It's coming from some of the managers. I'm not sure, which ones. And I'll just, I think, go through some of the kind of the highlights of those comments. There's concerns about page 1 of the report where we talk about this committee has identified multiple areas for potential improvements. And this is the first phase in what is anticipated as an ongoing multi-phase process. So that caused a lot of concern with the managers, of course. There's also comments about there was not sufficient time for the managers group to review this information, and not a lot of time for staff input. There's concerns about the damage to morale and relationships that this type of change could cause. Again, there's a concern about the timing of this recommendation and this report, why now? And there's comments about the evaluation of the AGM job description. Job descriptions are, simplified and basic, and the AGM does a lot more things that aren't contained in the actual job description. We talked about the overlap of positions based on job descriptions, and one of the comments is that this is a good thing and provides backup when there are absences in one of the manager positions. And then there's concerns about, well, when we did the analysis with comparative agencies that maybe we didn't look at all the other job descriptions that may be similar to an assistant general manager. But actually, I think we did that. We included public works directors, for example, as being an AGM equivalent. So that's really my synopsis of some of the manager comments. And I would invite any of the managers to expand on these comments under public comment.
Sure, thanks, John. I just, for myself, what really sticks out to me is what we wrote on page 6 under organizational effectiveness. From the time I got on the board, I've always wanted to make sure that we were as efficient and streamlined as possible. Because I felt that if we had an organization that functioned more efficiently, we could better serve the ratepayers. So that's always been a top priority of mine, and that's one of the things we looked at in increasing this effectiveness. Mainly, from my point of view, it's like there's more direct communication from the general manager with the employees or the department heads at least, so that the GM can have a better overall knowledge of what's going on in the department. I don't know, Chris, you had a couple of things too?
Yeah, I mean, I can go into what I was, my thought process on this, because it will help explain how we came to the conclusion that we finally came to. If you recall, when John was hired as general manager, one of the mission statement items that he listed on his, in his mission statement was that reorganization was one of the topics he wanted to address as general manager. Okay, so with that said, I'll go back historically, and I believe that this idea was proposed to Richard maybe during the time that Paul Shudo left. And it was categorically rejected by Richard at the time. So this is not a new idea. This is not something that we just concocted over the last 3 weeks. This is something that's been at the top of my process of thought for several years, if not almost a decade. I know John this morning showed us a reorganization study that was done in the past with several recommendations that were never implemented. And I know change is really difficult, and this has been a hard committee to be on because we're proposing things that haven't been done before. But change is never easy either. I mean, honestly, as an ad hoc committee, I foresee this committee staying active for quite some time. And this wasn't our only recommendation. It's just the first of the ones that we proposed or came up with through our discussions. And if you recall me saying about 100 times before, we are directly responsible to the ratepayers who are the owners of stupid. I mean, they pay the bills. It is our job to oversee the finances of the district, to make sure that we can guarantee to them that we're spending their money as wisely as we can. And when 2008 hit, we reduced O&M. We gave ourselves a big pat on the back. We did nothing in the salaries and benefits department or in the reorganization department, although we probably could have. So while it's taken a little time to get there, this is where we are, and this is what I see us pointing our focus at for some time. I mean, we want to make sure that you guys are ready to go when things aren't so good, because if we wait to that point, it's too late. And there will be another downturn in the economy at some point, and then we're going to be wondering what to do about it. Well, now we're being a little more proactive and deciding that we can spend that money in other places, whether it's frontline employees, capital improvements, wherever that gets spent, it will be money that we can use or to offset rates. And we're not the first agency to do this. I think if you go back 2004-ish, GRPA had a similar cut in jobs. I think they cut 10 or 11 positions. It was drastic. It was necessary at the time. It made them more productive. So we're not really basing our recommendations to the board to point it at a single person, but to improve the whole operation of the district and its staff. And so that's the insight that I can give you from my perspective. Again, I'll reiterate, this is probably not the only thing we'll come up with, And that's up to John. I mean, he tasked us with this, and it was very delicate, and it's difficult, and this is our recommendation to this point. And that's, we're not taking this very lightly. So that's kind of what I had to say about that.
Thanks, Chris. I think you were much more articulate than I was on this, so I appreciate that. I'd like to hear other opinions, other thoughts. If there's anyone in the room, if there's anyone on the phone that wants to give us input, this is a big deal. So I'd like to hear everybody's shot.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, no, I definitely want to hear what you have to say.
I'm going to close this. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about or speak to this agenda item today. I've got a bunch of notes here so that I try not to go down too many rabbit trails. So I'm going to read off my notes. As you might imagine, I'm a little bit rattled by this the timing and the issue at hand. It came very much as a surprise. First off, I'd like to applaud the ad hoc committee, particularly for the goals that you're seeking to address the financial challenges that are significantly facing this organization. And also, I completely agree that there's real value in seeking organizational efficiencies. I'm going to go off my notes here for just a second. One of the things that if I understood it correctly, Chris, is that there are several proposals out there for organizational change that is coming through the committee. And I would like to encourage that piecemealing or make a statement that I don't think that piecemealing organizational change is a really great idea. It is much more, I think, effective when you have a comprehensive plan going forward. And so my recommendation is bring those things forward. It would be my recommendation, evaluate them, and then come up with an overall plan. But back to my notes, I do disagree with many of the aspects of the report. While I could go through a litany of my accomplishments and the value that I've brought to the organization, I recognize this isn't about me, it's about the assistant general manager position. And I'd like to focus my comments really about one of the aspects of the report. What this report does not seem to consider is the volume of work done by the assistant general manager, the general manager, and the managers. Looking at only the essential functions of a position alone doesn't address the overall issue of workload. My managers are already fully loaded, as is the general manager. Additional work added to an already full plate means that things will fall off and not be completed. The team is already at that point, and some of the items that are alluded to in the report as not being accomplished are not being accomplished because the core mission of our organization, the delivery and water and sewer services to our community, takes priority in some of the work that we would love to be doing, but we're not able to focus our resources on everything that is on our plate. One of the first things that falls off the plate when we get busy is interdepartmental communication and coordination. I guess that's two things. And a huge part of the assistant general manager's job is just that. The role is to keep the departments working together and communicating. It needs to rise on virtually a daily basis for that kind of interdepartmental coordination. By eliminating the assistant general manager position, whether that's me or is someone else, you would be creating more inefficiency in the system, in the organization, and increasing the risk to our abilities to deliver services. I spoke with someone who has experience in exactly this situation. They work for a private utility that has multiple companies in this utility, and they, as a cost savings measure, went through and eliminated assistant general manager positions in all of their organizations. And the result was that the roles, the work that fell to the general manager, it overloaded those individuals, and they had to push most of that work off to other managers. The lower level managers ended up taking on that work. Excuse me. which meant that they really struggled to accomplish their core missions, their normal duties. And the interdepartmental communications deteriorated, the siloing of the departments, something that we've worked on eliminating here for quite a while. The silos were developed in those groups as the managers were forced to just focus on their jobs, focus on their team and accomplishing only their mission, and not being engaged in this bigger picture that their assistant general managers were focusing them on. And again, this wasn't a single location. This isn't one company and one result. This was multiple companies, multiple entities in the same company, but it was a lot of utilities. And so in my mind, it's somewhat of a case study for what's being proposed here. Ultimately, in this situation, the efficiencies were reduced in the organization. They actually saw the resulting the results were that they had financial losses instead of gains by making this particular move. I think it would be prudent to learn from the private sector in evaluating the ad hoc committee's proposed approach. Perhaps we should be speaking to other entities to go out and talk to folks who've done this and find out what the repercussions were and what happened. And not to take a whole bunch of time, but I'd just like to speak a little bit about myself just for a minute. And first off, I'd say that it's been a privilege for me to work for this organization and an honor to work with these people. If there are deficiencies in my performance, I am far from perfect. I would love to hear about those so that I can make improvements in how I'm performing. If there is a desire to change the assistant general manager position, I'm ready to work with you and John to modify the position and in order to achieve the district's goals. Happy to engage in that process. And if funding of the position is the issue, I'm willing to take less money for this work. I'd recommend looking at the proposal as it stands today. I'd recommend that we, as an organization, look at the proposal, look at the costs and benefits of the proposed approach, and then do a thorough evaluation and make a clear decision. In my mind, I recognize you may have been thinking about it for a long period of time. I totally understand that, but this seems to have been somewhat rushed, and there are, again, limitations with the information that's been provided and the analysis that was done. With that being said, I'm happy to entertain any questions you might have or turn it over to anybody else's comments if there's anyone who wants to speak to this. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon. That was very well put. Does anybody in the room have anything to say? Chris? Oh, okay. As a new board member? Sure. Remember, I'm not going to swear you in today.
But you are actually under the ground actually the minute you're elected.
Right. Good afternoon. I'm Dave Peterson. I don't want to wade into this particular decision directly because I haven't been involved in any of the discussions leading up to this. I scanned the report. It looks like a lot of work was put into it. A lot of difficult examination was put into it, and so I appreciate that as a ratepayer. I can give you a couple of experiences, both from the public agency perspective and a private company perspective. I was a board member on the water district, and we transitioned at one point to add an assistant general manager. We had a general manager that was handling everything, and we became convinced that an assistant general manager position was needed, and we added that position. The AGM essentially did a lot of the work of the business, and it freed up our general manager to go do statewide stuff on committees and regional organizations, and did a lot of work outside of the district that really wasn't for the benefit of the ratepayers. That's the way it evolved. So the AGM was doing all the work of the people's work, but the GM was off, doing things that really weren't that important. And it became very hard to undo that. Several of us on the board realized we made a mistake by adding that position. and it was very difficult to undo it, we didn't undo it while I was there. So these things tend to gain inertia, and I really respect what the committee has said about needing to evaluate the organization and seek efficiencies continually. That's what we do in the private sector. And that's the other thing. I've had my own company for 15 years, and I can tell you that we make these kind of decisions every day, but we don't ruminate that long over them. We make these decisions, and sometimes that means we let people go, and it's hard. But that's what you have to do sometimes. So that's business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the input.
I have some comments too.
Who's behind that voice?
Richard Silver.
Oh, Richard. Thanks, Richard.
Hi.
Again.
How's everybody?
Good.
Yeah, how is everybody doing? I hope you're staying safe, with the virus out there.
So far, so good.
But anyway, I do have some. So far, so good. I understand. You guys are doing a good job keeping the services going in this weird time. But I just wanted to share a few thoughts when I heard this item was going to be on the board agenda today. So thanks very much for allowing the public input and my input as part of the public. So obviously, you've been hearing discussions, but this is it's a complicated issue, and it's going to impact directly quite a few of the management staff. It's either going to change the direct reports for at least 5 managers, and I've heard indications that having more contact with the general managers was good. But if you just take those 5 managers and report them to the general manager, that's 8 direct reports for a single person overseeing professional level managers. And I can tell you from years of being at the district and trying to do that, a person cannot provide adequate oversight on basically year-round to 8 professional managers doing quite different tasks and jobs at the district. So that option would have pitfalls. So therefore, then another option would be is to tier. And I'm not looking at the report. Maybe it's all spelled out in there, but the tier managers. So basically, you're getting into a situation where you're changing the job descriptions for the majority of the management staff. I heard my name mentioned earlier, connected with a past reorganization, which we did, and it included elimination of senior management position, realignment of crews, changing more guys on one crew, less people on another crew, a new crew on Alpine County. And that process brought in and involved all the crews, a representative of all the crews and all the managers that were impacted. And we had quite a few meetings and detailed out options and the pros and cons of the various options. And we completed, I think, a very successful process there. And I think that is illustrative of the fact that the district staff, which, let me back up a minute, I have, over the years that I was at the district, I received compliments and from various numerous sources saying that the district staff was the most professional, most dedicated utility group that anybody had worked with, lawyers, engineers, consultants, contractors. And I think a key part of that dedication and professionalism that the district staff had was that the staff feels that they are involved in the decision-making process, particularly when it comes to impacting their job, and they're used to having their input and their ideas and their suggestions taken seriously by the organization, and they feel that their voices are heard. So my main comment here now is 3 days to review the report that just came out really is quite inadequate for continuing that type of input from the staff on the organization and what's important. So that would be if I have a recommendation, would be to take don't think you're taking too much time to make decisions like this that have an impact across the organization. So with that, if you guys have any further questions of me, or I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, good luck on your deliberation.
Richard, thank you for your input. We all enjoyed working with you, and we know you were very good at what you did, so we appreciate your input.
Okay, I'll hang on. I'll hang on the line in case my name comes up again. I get to defend myself.
Well, that's if I don't cut your phone line off.
Oh,
Just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, Chris, did you want to say something?
Yes, please. Good afternoon. Talking about the position itself is what I'm mostly interested in. As a manager, field operations manager, I rely heavily on the AGM, and not because I can't do my job. I can do my job. I can make the decisions that need to be made. But it's also nice that I have somebody to go to who we can brainstorm, and by brainstorming on some of these projects, I don't have an exact list, but we have saved money on some projects by brainstorming, having a backup, having a resource of an AGM. John is more than capable of doing anything he puts his mind to. But I do have concerns that he will be overloaded. I've been here for 30 years. I've worked for 3 different AGMs. And I got to tell you that the job descriptions that you see, even in mine and other job descriptions, are basically open-ended. We've talked about this off and on for years. They're open-ended. There's a lot of times where we're out on a job, we have a sewer spill, we've got major things going on, and we're going to call somebody, to help the decision-making, which way to go. Just have that extra set of eyes on something. And that could be at all hours of the night. And we're putting a lot of burden on John to be able to do it. I understand exactly what you're saying. People are out doing stuff. I don't see that here. I think that the general manager has a full plate. They've tried hard. Richard, John, those are the only 2 I've worked for. But John's got a full plate. And my concern also is by cutting one position that is basically the hub of the district, in my opinion. A lot of people depend on that position. A lot of things have gotten done with this position as groups, things like that. And you're correct, change is hard. And I understand 100% what you're saying. It is hard. But I also want to reiterate that change in certain areas may create more problems down the road. Things may get left out. Things may not get accomplished. We may not do as much legislative work that benefits the district and our ratepayers, things like that. John could be up all night out there with us, and he could interfere with his daily duties, things like that. Things that people outside of the organization look at and go, oh, that's just minor, suck it up and go for it. In reality, when you're here doing the job, it is a little different. So I am concerned about the inefficiencies that this could create. But as a manager too, I've only had a couple days to look at the report. As a manager here, there are some goals in that report that want to be accomplished that are evidently taking a little more time or, than what we thought it was going to be to accomplish some of the goals. If we had time to maybe, as district staff managers of this district, had a chance to maybe sit back, take a look at these goals that are addressed in there. I know, speaking for me and my departments, I know I can make that happen as far as being the general manager, having more knowledge of what I can give him reports every day that'll bring him up to date on everything. I didn't realize where we were at until the other day when I saw the report. But given a chance to maybe district staff to go back and reevaluate some of this stuff, maybe try to help fix things, maybe that would be a route that you might consider for us to try. If not, I totally understand, but I think, speaking for myself, and I think I speak for some of the other ones, but for myself, having the opportunity to maybe go back and address some of the issues in that report, might be a way to go without detrimental effect to the district at this point. Maybe just a little bit more time to kind of evaluate and see how we can address some of this before we start just eliminating positions. The AGM position is a backbone for a lot of us here, and that job description doesn't explain everything. I know that for a fact. I see it daily. So thank you for the consideration, and thank you for letting me have the time up here.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Anybody on the phone other than that wants to speak? Let us know.
Hey, Randy, this is Jeff Lee. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Hey, I had some comments, and I'm going to have to actually skip around in them, though, because those guys did an excellent job of covering a lot of points that I wanted to make, and it was great to hear Richard's voice. When I heard about this, I was wondering if, what he would think of this and what would be his suggestion and his input. It occurred to me that, like, in considering what the AGM actually does, the best source of information is probably the person doing the job. And for those of us looking from the outside, that would be something less accurate. And then it occurred to me, like, Paul and Richard were actually former AGMs, and so they could be another resource. Speaking for myself, I basically want to agree with everything that Chris just said. And Shannon, I thought, had some interesting ideas, and that was quite humble of him to be open to working with proposals and tossing around some other ideas and see if there are other options than the full vote decision here. But basically, you guys know I have 34 years here too, and I started like as a temp and then an operator, supervisor, chief operator, and now this job that I've had since 2017. So I'm the manager of plant operations, for those that don't know, and I'm one of the reports that reports directly to Shannon, and I think I have a good grasp as far as from that view what he does that I see. But a couple things that I wanted to say, or especially one that hasn't been touched on, is how useful and valuable input from, and not just him, but that position was for me as a new manager coming in. And I worked under Ross Johnson, an excellent manager all those years, and all of my years at the district. But actually that didn't fully prepare me for the big step it was when I moved up. But Shannon's support and guidance not only unweighted me and actually made me what's a really challenging process much easier and emblazoned me to with energy to take it on, but he also developed me and gave me input and guidance, and actually saved me, in consulting with him, he saved me from a lot of mistakes and pitfalls I might have fallen into because he was there to do that. And it's not like all these functions couldn't be taken on by the GM instead of the AGM. I mean, I understand that concept, but my concern is, similar to what Richard said, is how effective and what quality will there be in trying to address all of these needs and loads that these additional people will bring to John, in addition to his already heavy load. I wonder that I think the cost benefit analysis comes down to way more than just dollars, obviously. There's intangibles here too. So I just want to, my theme is to express the value that I've experienced in working under that position. And I think that the process that we do, I've heard you guys talk about efficiency, and we've been talking about efficiency every year since I've been there. I mean, we all know that that's a core goal of the district. And I think that what we have in our system, even though it's not perfect, but this was a natural process that evolved, and efficiency was always the base consideration, efficiency and reliability. So we've come up with a system we have here through that natural process over time and experience. And I just think that, in my opinion, we shouldn't too casually or too quickly make a change like this. I really wish I was involved in the other reorg that we did when Richard was there, and that was quite a comprehensive process, and it was a collaboration at all levels and input and ideas and brainstorming, and I wish we had a little more time to provide input and brainstorming, and including with Shannon on alternatives or modifications to what you guys are discussing. So anyway, that was my main point that I wanted to get across, and thank you for listening.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate that.
I'd like to add a couple of things. Thinking about what I wanted to say, with the exception of newly elected Director Peterson, I've been at the board or with the district shorter period of time than anyone in this room. What I'd say when I first ran in 16 and I lost, ran again in 18 and I won, the thing that stuck with me with the district and in every meeting and interaction and how I reflect upon the community is just our excellence, true excellence. And so the question is, well, what establishes excellence? It's a culture. Fundamentally, it's a culture. It's a culture of excellence. And what sets us aside from the city, what's us aside from TRPA? I work with all those agencies every day, and I can tell you the difference is dramatic. And so my question, my statement isn't really so much as a function of the report per se, although I will get into some elements of that in a second. Is what we're doing, does it behoove and does it align with what we've done historically, our character and our culture? Because I'll be honest, I had not been brought a discussion of possibly removing staff. Yesterday was the first day I'd heard of it. So it's not that we didn't have any discussions. The committee, and I really, I commend you for your, what you did. It's a challenging task. And so please, I really don't want anyone to take this the wrong way. But I was sworn in mid-October. We're sitting here on October 2nd. We're looking to remove a staff member 2 days later. That's never happened before. So again, are you operating in the same character you've always operated with? And I appreciate examples as to, other entities that a general manager, assistant general manager, and a general manager created a lot of conflict and created issues. But I can say from my experience here, I've never seen that. I've seen excellence. I've seen character. And so if we're going to pursue this as an option, we need to make sure that those steps, the alignment, the plan, adheres to that character that we've established as a district. Because if we lose that, that's the special thing about us. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes me proud to be a district board member here and work so hard in 18 to be here. Because the second I was here, I knew this was the team I wanted to be on because I wanted to be on excellence, right? And so whatever we do needs to align with excellence and character. And so I have to say, when I read comments from some of the managers, I fundamentally agree. 2 days to review a position to then relieve, to impact a human's life forever in a community where you can't get a job, right, of a comparable stay, is a really big deal. And when you're also looking at the function and character of an entity that, in all my experience, has never shown one chink in its armor. So we need to make sure when we're doing that, that our processes and the steps we take do not create that first chink. And that's my concern with how this has been done. And so, whereas, again, I appreciate your roles, your responsibilities, and I'm sure the challenges you faced while you did this, I really do empathize and I feel for that as well. And so what I'm advocating for is, again, just excellence, a process that everyone can stand behind, that staff can stand behind, so that at the end of it, we can still make sure that when we look in the mirror as a district, we have the character we had at the end that we did at the beginning. And that's my comment. And so I don't know what that process would be. I don't want to elongate things, but I want to make sure the people involved and the people in this room and the people on the phone and in this building feel that when it's done. And I don't think if we voted today, they would feel that when it's done, because I don't feel that. I would not feel that when it's done. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Nick. Is anybody else out there? Okay, so this is what's probably going to happen. We're going to go through the rest of the agenda, and then we're going to talk about this a little bit in closed session. And then when we come out of closed session, I'm anticipating a little more discussion and possibly direction. So I hope that works for everybody.
I have some comments, but I can hold them if you're gonna have more comments later. It's up to you.
They're your comments.
Well, what I wanted to say is, I saw you the day you walked in when you were hired, a long time ago. And so, John has had the same opportunity I've had to look at our organization. It's not like he doesn't know it inside and out himself. And I was part of the reorganizations, and it is true the culture of our organization is to creep slowly towards decisions together, which is what kind of a government does, and it's generally good to make everybody happy, but it isn't always good, in my opinion, especially if you want to run like the business of a utility. And in June, I was appointed back. Prior to that, when John was hired, I said, I think we need to look at reorganizing, because it felt to me, meeting after meeting, I would hear how our crews were pretty short-handed, and that we were kind of right on the edge. If somebody left, we wouldn't be able to cover things. And with the COVID, it kind of reminded me of that too, if somebody had gotten sick. But it's my belief that, for instance, when I ran the chamber, ran the Boys and Girls Clubs, I waited 6 months before I did anything, but I felt it was my purview, if I was responsible for the organization, to make the decisions I needed to make. And I didn't even do what you did. I didn't involve a committee. I just said, I'm going to make these changes for efficiency. Here I go. The problem that's so hard is when you have an individual that you love that's so kind to you. I've been in your position before, and it's just terrible. Life always works out. Sometimes it's good or better. But that's the issue. We're one family here. But organizationally, John and I have talked for years about it sort of being a bottleneck of information that would come to the AGM and then would have to go. And he felt maybe a little bit more in the dark than he should be as a GM. But that he wanted to do an overall organization change. And I don't know to all what you guys have talked about, but I think it's John's call. And I always said that I would back him up once he made his decision. And so I'm in kind of a funny spot here. I didn't know what the decision was going to be. But I believe the GM has the right to make changes within the organization so they get the organization that they believe they can operate to the best efficiency of our utility. If that makes any sense. What a hard thing.
And I'd just like to say that any decision that's made, it's not personal. It's not, it really isn't. And it is tough. It is tough to think that you're affecting someone's livelihood. And I'm getting choked up. But it has to be an intelligent decision. It can't, you can't think about anything other than the efficiency of the organization and our duty to the ratepayers.
Can I just add one thing? I've worked in the private sector, and I've worked in a lot of crap culture. You know why? Because that's all we looked at was efficiency. I hated working. I hated waking up. I hated going in that office. I hated every moment of it. My work reflected that. It's important to remember that. You got to know what your goals are. You got to know what you stand for. And again, I stand for efficiency. When I talked about renewable energy, I ran in 16 and 18. I said renewable energy was going to save this district tens of millions of dollars. So a report. You got to stand by. But it took a long time of convincing. And so again, this is a really big decision in which up until yesterday, I had no idea was even being contemplated. And so everything else we've done has been discussed about. So this isn't a decision of, kind of death by 1,000 cuts or bureaucracy run amok. I don't see that at all. Because in the private sector as well, I would never be asked to, on a day's notice, make a vote that has just direct decisions. That's something that's running exceptionally well right now that I don't fully understand. And that's what I'm being asked to do at some level. Because I appreciate this report, but there's a lot of intersectionality about things that are going on and conversations I've had. One great worry, is I literally think the greatest liability this district faces is water regulation coming out of Sacramento. What's going to happen with that? That cost could be extreme. Look what happened with the metering, $25 million later. I have a lot of concerns, and I appreciate all other people will pick these things up, but I need to know how. I need to know how that concern would be addressed, right? I need to feel comfortable with it, because $3 million a day, it's not all a cost-benefit analysis of a well-running system. A well-running system needs to be contemplated from a lot of different angles. And so I want to know those things, and I just hadn't been provided the time, I would say, or kind of the forewarning that this was the direction we were going to have until a very short time. And again, if something's never been done before in the history of this organization, this time space, there has to be discussion as to why. And then I guess in fairness on my end, what would that be? And I think that'd be a discussion with the board what the appropriate nature of that is. Of course, I'm just one person, but that's what I want to say is that to have your end goal be efficiency, you can live like that. My end goal is to be able to look in the mirror and sleep at night. And so that does not mean I don't do wise decisions, because you have to live a wise life, and I agree with you completely. Kelly, I agree with you completely. But it's not just efficiency.
Brandon, if I could talk a little bit more about process and where the responsibility lies in the types of and numbers of staff. And Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really the board's purview of how many employees and what classifications. That's my understanding, and that's why we're here in open session, really with an abundance of transparency here today. There's been reorganizations in the past. This is the one that was done in 2004 and 2005. This was implemented. It never came to the board for action and approval. So there are previous organizations, but basically they just added new employees or changed them around. None of those came to the board. So we're here today. I met with two of the board members who prepared a preliminary report. It's preliminary. So it's really the first opportunity to bring this forward with a recommendation to the full board so we could have a discussion. There is no other opportunity, as I saw it, to have this discussion with the full board other than an open session.
Right, but I guess where I'm going with this is if we were going to contemplate what $3 million would do as it relates to this, because to some degree that's the crux of the rationale. Duplicative nature of responsibility means financial savings.
There's 6 pages there, and that's just one of the mentions.
Right, no, but
it's not the rationale. It's not the full rationale at all.
Can I explain something? I mean, I can sense the frustration that
right,
because from being surprised. And
right.
So let me explain a little bit so you feel a little bit different maybe. I was assigned this committee, right? And we assign ad hoc committees to discuss ideas, and we discussed ideas. We weren't really open to discuss those ideas with everybody else until we came up with our recommendations. And this is it's a work in progress, and this is just the first part of what we've come up with. And it was very difficult. This wasn't something I picked. This was something that was put upon me to be responsible enough to come up with something that, and the money, I mean, throw the money aside, the money at this point, and efficiency, put it aside. This is something that we're discussing as an ad hoc committee to bring to the board for discussion. So while you may not have known about it until 2 days ago, you know about it now, and we're discussing it, right? I mean, that's what we're for. Otherwise, the ad hoc system is worthless and does no good for anyone. And that's why we're here, right? That's why we're discussing it. That's why Randy and I were chosen for this committee. My probably mostly based on experience on the board. Dwayne as well could have done it, Kelly could have done it. I mean, we could have picked any number of people to be on this ad hoc committee. And I don't think we're done. I mean, honestly, an efficiency, while you may dismiss it, is not dismissible. We need to be efficient and productive and responsible to the people that say, why are we spending $35 million on salaries? What do we get for that? And that's what we're answering. That's the question that's posed to us that we have to come up with an answer for.
Right, and I guess where I'm going with this is, well, a couple of things. I'll say this part first, is that as we talk about efficiency, this is the most efficiently run entity I've ever seen. With every problem we have, the cost starts at X. How many times has Chris walked up to the podium and said, hey, it started here and I got the cost down here? I don't know how that sausage was made, to be blunt. I don't. And that's my concern. Because I don't have a full enough understanding of how that sausage was made. I don't want to do anything that would disrupt the making of that sausage. That's my concern. So, and that's why I'm not trying to be critical. I really hope that doesn't come across that way, because I'm just kind of thinking this through in the short time I had. Because that if I could put it down to one analogy, that would be the crux of my concern. The culture needs, how is the sausage made? And to Shannon's example, you could find all kinds of anecdotal examples, yay or nay, but I want to have a clean understanding of the impacts that would have to that. And I just don't feel like I've digested it, because again, if the culture changes these different things, what have you lost? So I'll just leave it there.
But when we had our last forum for the board member candidates, most of them agreed with me when I said the board is the what and the staff is the how. And I'm not. Sometimes it can be a detriment when you have engineering background and things, because you can want to dig deeper into what the how is than perhaps is needed. But that we have one employee, and that's the general manager, and well, maybe Gary counts, but for the most part, that's our employee, and we task him with putting together an organization that will carry out our end goals and the goals of our ratepayers. And that's what's hard for me, because I've coached the kids of the people in here. We've, dragged around Washington D.C. together, or been dragged around. So, and I have very, very fond relationships with people, and it makes it much harder. But if this was my business, I would have to do it so that my kids could eat. And our customers need to be able to have us run as efficient an organization as we can. And that means we hire a general manager, we give him tasks, he tells us what he needs, and we supply it.
I've let this go on for probably longer than I should have, because I really wanted to hear all these thoughts. But I think at this point, I'd like to move on if you guys don't object, because we will be talking more about this in closed session, and we'll talk about it in open session afterwards, possibly. That's all right with you guys?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Let's spend some money. Payment claims.
I move approval of payment claims in the amount of $2,786,270.01.
Second. Is that stuff oil? Is that you? Sure. It came up on the screen out here. I don't think you guys saw it, but did you?
Okay. Let me guess.
Did you see
500.
it? Exactly. Got it.
Next is understanding the AD-HOC committee reports. We have a workforce housing. I don't know if John, you want to give this, or if Dwayne, you want to chip in, or if both you guys participated.
Sure, I can tee it up a little bit. We last met on October 22nd. We went over the project status of a few projects that are in progress in town. St. Joseph's has 3 homes on Riverside. civic development, about 80 units at the corner of Ski Run and Pioneer Trail, and then 248 units called Sugar Pine Village over past the Y. So we've been in contact with those developers. Paul, I don't know if we've been in further contact with related to Sugar Pine Village developer about them, I guess, giving us a proposal for their connection fees.
I have nothing.
Okay, good. So we're waiting for them to propose assistance for these connection fees. And then we also talked about, again, we have a number of bank sewer units, publicly held and privately held. We want to help contact our privately held customers that have bank sewer units and connect them with the developers. So that's in process. I'm working with Shelley and Melanie to kind of put that program together. And I think that's pretty much it. We kind of came down to a couple different options when these low-income housing projects come forward. We can help finance those connection fees over time, and or we can connect them with the public or the privately held bank sewer units. So I think that's pretty much what we went through.
We were talking about having the Prosperity Center perhaps be the ones who keep track and help contact people that have the sewer units. It's not a hard task, and they don't have that many people over there. But we thought maybe that might be a good way to go. People get a little suspicious when we call them about their well or their sewer units. They just act different. But the idea is we've got 25, I'll repeat what we already know, I guess. If we've got 2,500 sewer units, we could put them into play. That's about 20% of our revenue income, our quarterly income that would go up. So it behooves us to find a way to do that. And one of the ways that we're going to have to do it, because it's so expensive to build affordable housing, is find a way to get them in the door without having to pay a high fee to start with finding financing it. And doing that, I think we talked about we could use property tax funds because they are not as restricted as our district revenue, our normal revenue source is, in terms of being able to have flexibility. Is that correct, Gary?
Right, a little detail on that.
Certainly.
We were requested to take a look at this issue dealing with the impact of prohibition against public activity of other funds. We had looked at it back in 2012 when the Aspens project was in process, and they had come asking if there's a way they could get reduced connection fees. So we did update the research that we had done before. I frankly expected maybe something would have changed given the need and pressures from affordable housing, but that unfortunately did not turn out to be the case. The law is basically the same as it was in 2012. The funding source, doing this right, you could use, you can't use rate credit, and you can't, you can use your property tax revenue to fund it. You couldn't do that. The problem is the purpose of reducing connection fees for affordable housing is not within the purpose of the district. And we actually looked at a number of agencies just to see, double check from a practical standpoint, is there anyone doing it? And we were unable to find any public utility district that does that, whether it's sewer or water. And the only ones that really are doing it are cities and counties, because they're general purpose agencies, and those purposes to develop affordable housing and provide incentives for affordable housing is well within their public purpose. And so that limitation, unfortunately, for the district is still there. I mean, for the Aspens project, we rationalized that by funding it over a period of time, interest, the district was basically kept whole. So there was no gifting problem there. But we, other than that option right now, as far as, and the other thing is you have to go through a Prop 26 process to adjust rates, and you can't adjust rates down for one class and basically up then for another class because you got one supporting the other, and that's good. So the limitations still apply, and that's where I think Dwayne and others were discussing that option of trying to facilitate some bank and getting information out that there may be some benefits, tax benefits available, and how to facilitate people that have these surveys and may not ever want to use them on their property, to maybe get a way for people to know about them and to be able to contact them. Because the district can't provide names of their customers that have these. That's confidential information.
And the El Dorado Community Foundation, I think, has some way of helping get tax benefits. Then there's one other way that I came up with that I won't be here, but I'll probably come back and talk to you about, is the district has properties that we would like to acquire that the city has. For instance, in back of Meeks there, we have a station, pump station, and people are camping on either side and they're stealing things out of vehicles. There's blowing locks at our people. It's not a safe environment, and just like to make it safer. So I had an idea, and that would be to trade property that we have for properties that the city has of, we have to have an equity value, so we're not gifting. And then that property, the city could gift, because they have the ability, to affordable housing projects, so that we need meeting basis in the land. That's something I hope is kept in mind, because we do have land available. Even with solar, we still have land. So I'm hoping that that is considered. It's kind of a win-win-win.
April, can I ask you a quick question? With the prorating affordable housing option that happened before, why was the payback so poor? Just not being terribly familiar with it.
Yeah, and you heard Gary say that, talk about that option gave us the possibility of being paid back, not a guarantee of being paid back. It was a loan for 50 years, and the repayments are made with what they call residual receipts, which is it's a specific definition based on their revenues and subtracting out certain expenses. And if they have those residual receipts, they make us an annual payment, but if they don't in that particular year, they do not. And it's probably been 7 years since that project went forward, 6, 7 years. And in that time period, we received 2 of the annual payments out of those 7 years.
So is there other mechanism to set up prorated agreements like that? And just out of curiosity, I'm not terribly familiar with how you do it. As far as where you could guarantee a higher level payback if you were going to, include that as an option for affordable housing?
Just make it in the agreement.
Yeah, it's right in the agreement. I believe, though, and this was based on, once again, the experience with the Askins, they needed that type of agreement for them to qualify for those housing.
That's what I remember too, is that the deal would have gone,
yeah,
it wouldn't have gone through whatever, if they didn't have that specific verbiage. And
yeah. But it was a much smaller amount of money compared to some of the projects we're talking about today, especially the 248 project. Because the Athens paid 100% of their sewer connection fees, which was by far the largest portion of their project. And I think that was about $700,000 at that time. And they financed, with the 50-year term, the water connection was about $150,000. And they paid us $20,000 at this point.
That's just interest so far, pretty much, or not even quite.
Except as a beta test, it was a failure, I think.
Yeah.
That would good though.
We're using that as our litmus. We're not. Is that something up there going for you guys?
Is there any other standing or ad hoc committee reports? I don't think there are. I do not have a board member report. Does any other board members have one? Do not. Okay. And what's going on at the El Dorado Water Agency Purveyor? I have to read it. I always want to stick to county.
So, and I was just trying to look on my calendar. There, it says, have we heard the meeting is going to be either the 18th or the 19th? It's going to be at a different, it's not going to be at the regularly scheduled time.
I actually hadn't noticed, but I knew they were planning something for
Right,
that.
yeah. And I don't know if I've heard for sure when it's going to be, but it'll be like 18th or 19th.
Right. So I've got some updates for you on staffing. We have recently refilled an open position in underground repair sewer. This was an in-house recruitment, and Anthony Gregorich will be transferring in from DVR. So now we have 2 openings at DVR, and we expect to advertise later this year and early next year for those DVR positions. We are currently advertising for 1 underground repair water position through November 19th. And in pumps, our second longest tenured employee, Chris Morita, at over 40 years, he's retiring. So we will begin advertising for a pumps position in the next week or so. And Liz is still short a HR assistant, and this recruit will be coming out, I think, later this month, correct? Next, Tahoe Water Suppliers Association. The district, as you know, is a member of the TWSA. And this is a consortium of 12 water agencies from around the lake. The TWSA has been selected by TRPA, their staff and board members, as one of this year's Spirit of TRPA award recipients to represent the group of public utility districts and general improvement districts who work so hard to protect our lake and provide services to our communities. So we really appreciate this recognition from TRPA. And finally, COVID-19 update. Still no sickness within the district, and no employees are out due to COVID precautions. So great news. Our field crews have returned to a normal kind of pre-COVID 10-hour shift, 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. And more of our office staff are returning to the office as well, although a fair number continue to work remotely, at least to some degree, due to health risks, to minimize office risks in close spaces like customer service, and help balance school and childcare issues. So that's a quick update there. And that kind of moves us into a staff report on our customer assistance program for COVID. Jim?
Long way around the agenda to get here. I'm here. Today, or as of October the 30th, I'd just like to report on the COVID rate relief program. We have 739 customers that took advantage of it, which totaled $161,462. And talking with customers, and we're still getting calls because the program is now ended, and we have customers that's calling in and want to say, hey, look, I know I'm late, can I still do this? And I promised them that I would talk to you about this today and maybe consider extending this program until the end of the year. Basically, we have 3 types of customers out there. We have the customers that knew about this program and said, thank you, but we're doing good. So, but thanks for offering. We have the customers that said, thank you for the program. It really helped. We've been out of work. It's really helped us, take the edge off in our bill. And then we have the 3rd class of customers that still haven't heard anything about this. Don't know anything about it. So those are the calls. We've got several calls coming in that are wanting to take advantage of this program. So
when did our last paper bills go out?
Went out about middle of October.
It's in the bill.
Yeah. So another to add to that, it was in our bill, but we're still working with our billing system. So I don't know if you've seen your bill yet or not, but font is very small.
My wife isn't happy with it.
So we're still working on a lot of issues with the billing system. So
I've heard. We get kicked off of auto pay, and then it tells us we're late, because.
Yes.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But the good news is the board waived late fees, so I'm good.
Otherwise,
Yeah, exactly. So that may be something if we're interested in extending the rate relief program, I can bring that back to you at the next board meeting.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I kind of wanted to talk about that. I think we can talk about that now. I don't really know what the rest of the board feels on that. I know what Dwayne does, I should say.
okay.
What were those sums again?
Nick, there was 739 customers that took advantage of it, a total of $161,400.
My only comment is, some people still think that they have to apply, fill out a form.
Yeah.
They just get that feeling. I don't know how to fix that. And the other is that we expected that we were going to spend much more. So that in terms of the overall budgeting for this project, there's still money there.
I have mixed feelings on this, because I know there's different groups of people within Tahoe. There's people like me that have worked all the way through and it hasn't been an issue, and then there's people who are really hurt and really need it. One of the things, I think it was our last meeting, the meeting before, we talked about year-over-year sales tax increases through the summer. In other words, the city is seeing more volume of sales than it did in the past. So I understand it's the same with TOT. So to me, that kind of argues against extending this program. It almost feels like our community's coming back. But Dwayne, you probably have a better finger on that pulse than I do.
Some people did fantastically in July. You're looking at March, you look at the March sales tax figures.
Well, yeah, we know those were down.
Yeah. So when you're in business, you get one bad month, it takes a while to catch up. Like the pizza parlor, some of them that had delivery, it was a real boon to them because so many other businesses were closed. But right now, for instance, if you look at some of the restaurants that don't have much indoor seating, I'm thinking restaurants because it's what I know best, they are in trouble because if they're going every other seat, it's guaranteed that they can only be half full. You got to be full and turn 3 times to make your money. It's Kelly.
And I think where they really, and even up until like 2 weeks ago, it was downtown. It was Azul Base Camp. You could go down there and you could just see.
Yeah, there's tons of people.
It never slowed down. It hit the Y corridor. And I have to say that, I have a huge backyard. I was lucky. I had a huge backyard. I didn't have to do anything.
That's going to come to an end.
Well, and that's what I was just saying. But that has come to an end. That has come to an end. And because of the size of my facility, it doesn't matter if we go to 75%. I'm still at 25% occupancy because I have to have, the social distancing. And so, it doesn't, I'm going to be at less than 50% capacity throughout the whole winter. Unless we go back to 100%.
The city does have a program, and they've allocated, I think, $80,000 to it or more, where, let's say, if you need to buy some outdoor equipment, like some heaters and things.
I'm not even entertaining that.
So the answer is some people are doing very well, some people are dying.
Well, just to refresh everyone's memory, the way this program was implemented, it can be renewed by just board direction. In other words, we can renew it right now if you guys want.
It requires a motion.
Requires a motion, okay. So it would have to be on next meeting's agenda.
Correct.
Okay. So, but we don't have to rewrite the thing. We could just make a motion and reinstall it at next meeting.
But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we think that maybe we should kind of change it because of the
Maybe limit the amount, the
right,
maximum
like
amount.
put a limit on.
Well, I understand Marriott took advantage of the grant of $15,000.
Can I interrupt here for a minute?
Yeah.
This is getting aside to more of a full discussion board, and it's fine for comments, but.
We're such an little joy. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's just have staff look into this. And hopefully, we'll put it on next agenda and we'll, if we want to make a motion, extend it, we can, or not extend it.
Sure.
Does that work?
Sounds good.
Well, my comment would be if it's the number of people applying is diminishing and we still got excess capacity to give this. And there's some small minority in the population of our city that need this, maybe the older or the ones that are unemployed. I mean, why wouldn't we? I mean, I'm kind of with Randy. I think the economy's doing okay, but not for everyone.
Right. Okay, I'll bring something back.
Can the board direct staff on if we want to look at applying caps or
On what?
applying caps? Right now, there wasn't a cap. At one point, we talked about allowing customers to apply applies the wrong word, to sign up X amount to address the, of the 170,000, 50,000 that want to marry on.
Yeah,
Just looking for board direction, if we got that now on.
Bring back options.
they're a big company, but they also have 40 businesses that lease from them that aren't paying any rent because the governor told them they didn't have to, and they're losing about $500,000 a month, according to my sources. So I'm not sure. We're maybe still a drop in the bucket compared to that, but big companies go big.
And by the way, my complaint wasn't that they took 50 grand. They suffered bad in the early months on this, so it was legit, you know.
I mean, I'm talking, the day that the governor said, they got a letter of whoever was running whatever subleases, like Gary Castile Jr. had a bunch of them. They just sent him a letter saying, we're not paying. The governor said we didn't have to, nanner, but he's still got to pay. So it's very, very complicated, and we're putting, a small Band-Aid on a very spotty boo-boo, I guess you would say. I don't know how to put it. Doing our part. And it was probably, we couldn't have done anything better for customer appreciation than what we did.
And what we can do as staff is put something
Yeah,
together that fits
you know what
the situation.
you know what
and bring it back to you. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Is there anything else that came up since we, under staff attorney, since we published this thing? Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. And we're going to go into closed session. Melanie told me because of communications, we're going to be in the conference room there. So.
What I can do,
Yeah, that's like, yeah.
I can keep the session open.
We're going to have, hold on.
I gotta dial this back in for everybody.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Give me 1 second.
Got it.
I have the recording started.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound.
Okay. All right, so we're coming out of the closed session into the open session, and what I would like to do is have Gary report on what is reportable in closed session.
Okay. In closed session, board took 2 actions. One is to appoint John and Liz to negotiate with the management unit regarding this potential change. And 2, appointed Liz and Nick to enter into negotiations with Shannon regarding this position.
Okay, and at this time, Gary, could you kind of give us a guideline of what the board should be?
Yeah, at this point, you can continue your discussions to extent you want on your reorganization plan. At this point, though, you're not in a position to approve the plan yet, because there are other moving pieces that have to be included first. And so you can give direction Staff, you can conceptually approve the plan if you like. Final approval estimate.
Okay, does anybody have any discussions on this? No. Okay, I would like, if we can get a consensus, would like to conceptually approve this plan. See if anybody else agrees with me.
I can agree with that.
One?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
No.
Okay. So, is that enough?
Well, I mean, there's no action.
Right, exactly. That's, I just want to make sure
That's
that
fine.
I didn't need to add anything to that, or,
And so, we will proceed, staff will proceed, the people that have been appointed will proceed as been directed in closed session.
okay. Very good. If that is all, I think we can adjourn this meeting. Meeting adjourned.